Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Sorry, we're
Well,
2 minutes late. We're 2 minutes late. We'll talk about why that is later. It's always there's always a reason.
We'll have to talk about that later. Just kidding.
Welcome to everybody. Welcome to Outside the Inn. We are the Travis Larson Band, and what a week, huh? Whew. What do you do with that? I mentioned last week, and I feel like I should mention again, maybe with, well, I don't know if I should expound on it or not, but I'll state the same thing I did last week with more fervor. It's our job to try and hopefully bring some magic into the world and do some things that hopefully bring some light to things that are not necessarily going all that great. So that's what we're going to do this week. And it's not our job, and we are not qualified to really discuss anything debatable other than, as I mentioned last week, who's the man? Is it Hendrix? Is it Van Halen? These are the issues. So, I mean, we all know what's right and wrong. And so, you just try and live the best you can and lead by example and try and be a good person. And that the one thing I have to say is the people that show up to these live streams, every one of you guys is exactly that. And that's why you're here. And the internet, it gets a bad rap, I think, because everybody on the chat rooms and everything right now saying how the internet is so awful. The internet is just a breeding ground for negativity and people tearing each other apart and all this kind of stuff. But the internet's also amazing because I get to sit here with my friends, some of them in, other countries sometimes, and we get to talk about all things music and former tours that we've done together. And we get to put some music together for you guys remotely and all that kind of stuff. And that's all internet and technology. And technology inherently is not a bad thing. Much like, many things are not inherently bad things unless they're used badly. Is badly a word? So, so I think what's so great about the community we have here, and last week somebody called it something specific, and now I can't remember what it was. It was kind of like TLB Army or something, but it wasn't even something that militant. I forget how they put it, but such a history and a beautiful connection with all the people that hang out with us on here, that we know it's a safe haven for everybody. Nobody's going to shit on anybody else. If anybody had an opinion, we're all going to listen to it. And that's what's so great about everybody here. So on that note, let's start the show and try and have some fun tonight. And we're going to have one of our best friends on in a little while here who, the funny thing about this guy, and he's not coming right on, but we'll bring him on in about 20 minutes or so.
Or later.
Or later. Who knows when he's going to show up? You know how it is. And generally we do the show until about 8:30, but with Larry, it might go till 9. It might go till 9:30. You never know.
Midnight.
It's anything like his solos.
Right. But
Speaking of performative,
when we very first started these things, because there was only a pandemic going on in the world and we couldn't, see everybody. The very first person everybody assumed was going to be hanging out with us was Larry Mitchell. Everybody was automatically like, Larry Mitchell, because I said that we were going to have some special guests. And Larry has done more time in the Deathstar with us than any other artist, period. And he's lived at, my house for probably weeks over a combined period of time now. And I've probably lived at his house over weeks, over a combined period of time, and all that kind of stuff. So, so we're really happy to be having him. Somebody says Brian Beller with a question mark. We already did Brian Beller.
Yep.
You got to go back into the archives to check out Brian Beller, and that was a really good one, by the way.
Mm-hmm. That's Emulin, who we know through Brian Beller.
Yeah, but
talking about a supportive community, people are even supportive of my hair. I've seen 3 remarks.
Seriously, though, who could be supportive of that?
Only a mother.
I mean, what's going on there?
Last time I was thinking it was kind of George Michael, but now, like, at some point this week, I looked at myself and thought it was like Thomas Dolby, right? You know, it was just like, but now it's behaving. But
wow,
it's a lot of hair.
Really impressive.
I mentioned before, this is getting a little too nerdy, but this is why Larry will be the perfect guest later, because we have a lot of things in common that people may not know about. And one of them is just kind of nerdy sci-fi fandom, that kind of stuff. So I'm starting to see the, I'm forgetting the main guy's name again, which I did last week, but in Escape from New York, you know, the guy that plays Shep, you know,
I was always out referenced on that.
Famous singer sings the Shaft soundtrack.
Yeah.
What is his name?
Oh,
in South Parkdale.
Oh, yeah. Well, now I'm blanking on it. What's wrong with me? Isaac Hayes.
Isaac Hayes. Okay. This is the kind of nerdy conversations we get into in the van. So Isaac Hayes is sidekick in Escape from New York. That's where it's starting to go with that hair.
Nice. Okay, I'll have to rewatch. Speaking of South Park, I was given this by a student a long time ago.
Hang on. We didn't even start show and tell yet.
Well, speaking of sci-fi, I guess we're going right into show and tell.
Right into show and tell.
This. I have.
Oh, Larry's gonna love that.
Holy
capacitor.
Holy! Can you angle it just slightly down a little bit? It's glaring.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Holy crap!
It's glaring off of everything.
That is a.
My brother made this.
It even has that 1950s labeler tape.
Yep. Yeah, my brother made this out of it. I don't have it plugged in, but it does light up. Or no, I don't have the. What is that stuff called?
Yeah, you don't have the nuclear. Yeah, you don't have the nuclear fuel for that.
My brother fabricated this all out of just parts sitting around in his garage.
Holy crap!
Actually, he's like, awesome. I had to buy one thing. I had to buy these black ties because all I had was clear ones, and that wasn't going to do the job. So
that's how you got stuck with that.
And this little thing lights up.
Wow!
So
nice job, Jen's brother.
I know, and there's a little switchy thing here. So
that's how
my
you got
sci-fi Back to the Future.
That's how you got stuck with us in this band, is you ran out of fuel for the time machine.
Right.
So if you put that thing on the Deathstar, would we be able to do 88 miles per hour?
Yeah, right.
No, we could go back to the 80s when prog rock was popular. Or the 70s, whenever.
Because the van, the van's only an 8-cylinder, and when it's fully loaded with, like 4 or 5 of us and full of gear, 88 miles an hour is pushing it.
Yeah. 88 miles. Well,
now.
I say that like it's the truth.
Remember that time we had a blowout at about 88 miles an hour?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Northbound on 5 near Portland.
Yeah, we were driving from Tacoma, Washington to Portland to do a radio show in Portland. It was Vicky's radio show, Guitar Shop Radio. I don't know if she's on here tonight, but often she is. But sometimes she doesn't get the memos, and then she goes, "I didn't get the memo." But anyway, so we were driving down the 5, doing a comfortable 85, 86. We probably hadn't crossed flux capacitor speeds, but we had to get there,
Maybe we were getting close, and that's why.
We did have a bubble forming on the tire over a period of weeks, though. In the Deathstar's defense and in my stupidity. This was early on. I've learned now to keep an eye on these things. And so we heard a shotgun just go off and we were in the far left fast lane in a 4-lane freeway, just hauling ass in a Ford
Loaded up and hauling ass.
In a Ford 1-ton E350 with a
V10.
a V10 engine, burning about 4 gallons of gas a minute. And we heard the shotgun go off, and all of a sudden the van just started like bouncing, just doing, doing, doing. And so I just let off of the accelerator, let it kind of slowly, turned on the emergency lights, and before we were even off the freeway on the right, I was on the phone.
I remember that. I remember from where I sat too, some background, just owing to seating custom. Jen was always shotgun at this phase of the band. There was a time when Jen would always drive, but Jen was always shotgun, and you were always driving, Trav. And so there was pre-GPS, there was a really important navigator responsibility. So you guys had this like telepathy where all I knew is I heard something that sounded like a shotgun, and then Trav was basically making all the right instinctual moves. And then there's a moment where it starts to get a little sideways. And just as it does, Trav says, "Do I have it?" And Jen's already looking, going, "Yeah." So like you knew whether to wrestle it back into the lane and risk rolling it or just go across. But I remember that like it seemed fast at the time. And you know how things slow down? So I bet it was like 0.3 of a second. It was like, boom, and you're like, "Do I have it?" And Jen's already leaning forward going, "Yep, you got it, you got it." So you just, it's like you're trying to reel in a big fish without breaking the line. You're trying not to roll this van, and you've got 4 lanes to work with, and you wrestle it back and roll off the road. And then the other part you said was funny too, because that was pretty new that, you had information.
It was the first iPhone.
Yeah. So it was funny that we legitimately were rolling to a stop. You still hadn't lurched to a stop, and you're like looking tow trucks. And I remember remarking on that, and you had some weird comment, and right off the top of your head, which is like, whole thing about touring, right? You just keep moving, keep moving forward.
We made the gig. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were listening to the radio show before we got there because it was similar to this show, oddly enough, where I think it started at 5 and I think we were supposed to be on it at 5:30 or something like that. And so we were listening to the show when it started while we were in a flatbed truck. That was the other thing, is the flatbed truck came, and Dale rode in the van in the flatbed truck because it was only a 2-seater truck.
Yeah, and he did us a solid by letting us do that, right? Well, that was probably illegal, or maybe
I think if you were belted in Oregon, it was legal, but
not to ride in the
like
cab.
up there, like 15 feet up high, you got to be bouncing around like this.
Yeah. And I didn't have an iPhone yet, so there was no texting or anything.
And then, and then Jen and I are sharing a seat in this, tow truck or flatbed truck. So I just want to say hey to people real quick. I we haven't really looked through the chats real quick yet, but I see Eric Johansson. I assume that's former Names drummer Eric Johansson.
Huh. Oh, cool.
Right?
They just celebrated an anniversary.
Yeah, Eric and I were going back and forth on that. So that's
okay.
Let's see.
I wanted to send a shout out to Scott Baker, and I know his best buddy Wayne had an unfortunate accident, I think, a few days ago, and just wanted to say hope he's doing okay. And our thoughts are with him. Wayne.
Wayne's a big TLB supporter, and he took a fall off a ladder and broke his back a couple days ago. And so my understanding is he's doing better. He's been through the surgery and stuff, and
okay, good.
Obviously that's going to be a long, hard road, but it's looking positive in the long run, hopefully. So
yeah, okay, good.
Maureen,
hey Eric Davis.
Maureen says she's become addicted to the Saturday evening. Thanks, TLB. Thank you, Maureen, for coming and hanging with us. Like I mentioned earlier, this is as much for me as it is for anybody else, honestly, because I'm either here by myself in this place all the time, or I'm down the street with a chainsaw cutting trees down. And that's pretty much what it is. That's
Yeah, show me all your fingers, both of you, right now. What is this crap? Okay, Trav.
Look at I
Okay,
have arm socks on. I know I already showed them to you. But
nice. That's pretty cool. Okay,
What
thank you.
exactly is an arm sock?
Yeah,
it's a sock that you put on your arm.
you walked right into that one.
Well, see, sometimes
There's
a
a
person's arms are cold. Hey, Boyd.
Yeah.
Susan, my
No one's
sister-in-law is
saying
on
hey
here.
back. No.
My sister-in-law
Sorry, what?
dropped me off some really good food today.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
So I had some chicken and gravy and rice and peas for dinner.
Nice.
Yum.
So sorry, I'm still looking through the stream here. Not trying to.
So how are you guys doing after all that?
Oh, hey, there's
treat?
Heather Smith. I still owe her $10.
Oh, wow.
She said she's just here for $10. Here's a story with Heather Smith, just for, we'll move on to more widely known things as we go. But Heather and Jennifer and I went to school together. I've known Heather since I can't remember if it was maybe kindergarten or it was one of the early numbered grades, if not kindergarten. Anyway, I saw her in the post office probably in like the year 2000 or something like that, 2001, I don't remember. And I forgot my wallet. I had changed my shorts and forgot to put my wallet in it. And I was in line with a bunch of stuff. And so she gave me a 10.
Wow.
Nice.
That's probably like $1,900 now.
Yeah, I know.
Interest.
Imagine.
My word.
Oh, and Glenn Hinsman's on here. If you guys haven't said hi to Glenn yet.
Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
And Tim Brown. Tim Brown's the guy I mentioned last week that I see on the street sometimes when I'm riding my bike. I was also I was riding my bike today, and I saw our friend Jeff. Jeff has been trying to get on here. He's not a Facebook guy, and I keep telling him you don't have to be a Facebook member to get on here.
No.
So if you guys have friends that are not Facebook guys or girls, tell them they can get on here anyway. They don't have to comment, but they can come hang if they just want to feel like there's some people in the room that are, really geeky about Hendrix, Van Halen, and
flux capacitors.
Flux
arm
capacitors. Now I'm just, since I kind of missed a lot of these, I'm going through them now and kind of scrolling down. I see a lot of like positive hair comments for Dale. We long hairs don't sweat missing haircuts, Dale.
Yeah, yeah.
Fritz mentioned this. I was going to bring this up later, Fritz, when we were hanging out with Larry, which we're getting close. But did anybody hang out with Steve Vai today for his 60th birthday? I'll bring this up again because I know Larry is in touch with Steve, and so later on when you're done hanging out with us, unless you get bored of this, Steve wrote and recorded a new song and videotaped it in his studio, much like the kind of thing we've been doing, and he put a bunch of rules and stipulations on himself. So it was really interesting. He said, I got to do something with a Strat. I never play a Strat, but Strats are more, you got to wrestle with them a little more than you would say like an Ibanez Gem or something. I'm going to play with no distortion. I'm going to play with no whammy bar, and I'm going to play with no pick, like just making it as difficult as he could, and then made the most classic, awesome Steve, like sounds like an early Steve Vai thing. It's super, super cool. I watched that and I felt like I love it when people like that push themselves and then kind of remind you who they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Travis clued me into this going on, and I checked it out, and I was totally blown away. The song is called Candle Power, and he also employs this new technique that he, I guess, had worked on and played in this song called joint shifting, and it was so cool.
Joint shifting in California, a whole different thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Well, California, I don't know anymore. It's kind of
yeah.
But you could maybe describe better than Travis that technique he was using. It was a bending.
Yeah, so he would do a thing. I mean, it was basically the idea of just like a guitar player would hold a note and then bend a note into it on another string, but he was doing it on multiple strings. So it's almost like he was taking kind of like without any hint of country, but taking almost like some Johnny Highland country bending kind of virtuosity and applying it to the Steve Vai wackiness that exists. So where he was bending these notes into other notes in weird, crazy ways, but wrote, a really beautiful song with it. And it's funny, I just got a text from Steve asking if we saw that comment, but that's the comment I'm reacting. So yes, we saw the comment, Steve. By the way, Steve texted me right before we started the show tonight and said, I'm in the middle of a WKRP marathon. I won't be able to be a moderator tonight.
If anyone understands, it's you.
And I said, nobody would understand that better than me. And then he said, okay, I'll be there. So, but anyway, so the Steve Vai thing, it's really cool. You guys, later on, you'll have to go check it out because we don't have a new song for you this week anyway. We will next week. This week, I was busy cutting trees down.
You guys know what it's like to have both your strings.
Jen acts like we don't want to talk about that anymore, but she brought it up last week.
That was last week. This is this week. So
Okay.
what if you're doing the same thing?
We're not still cutting trees down in Jen's yard.
I got called a tree murderer last time. I don't want to revisit that.
Both my stringed instrument band members are off using chainsaws. And
I'm not cutting them down. I'm trimming them so that they will grow better. You know what I mean? It's more like
I get the value.
Helping them.
Yeah,
yes.
No, I hear
part
you.
of nature.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just looking out for your fingers, that's all.
They grow better when you cut them down, Dale.
The fingers?
These don't grow better when you cut them off.
You guys feel my pain, right? You guys out there feel my pain? My bass player and my guitar player out like playing with chainsaws.
Hey, we're not playing.
And sawzalls.
Yeah, that's right. We're not playing.
We don't play.
Oh gosh.
Mary says pruning, Jen.
Oh yeah, there you
go. Yes, thank you.
Werner says, "Can we please stop talking about killing trees?"
I'm not killing them. I'm making them stronger.
Fritz says the guitar values seem to have a very strong fretboard curve. I believe it was basically a Steve Vai version of a Strat. I think it kind of had a Strat neck, but the Steve Vai body and more of like a Strat pickup configuration. That's what I got from it. But Holly says it's not killing, it's pruning.
That's right. Thank you, Holly.
So,
you and Werner can go at it now.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, everybody.
Hey, Glenn earlier said in response to your sister-in-law bringing a meal, which was a beautiful gesture, and I don't want to, and I also don't want to cause any dissent, but he said,
who said this?
Glenn Hinkman,
yeah,
said should have been green beans, not peas. And I'm just going to throw out there, I agree.
Yeah, well,
but that is still a wonderful gesture on your sister-in-law's part, and I don't want to start.
Yeah, but here's the thing that she understands is that for a musician, any good food is free food.
It's true.
Especially right now.
And they're both free.
It's true. Yep. All
right.
Next.
Peas and green beans are.
Got a couple more minutes here. I'm just kind of checking to see. I got a who's the man for this week, but I'm gonna save that for Larry because we'll have some stories to tell. A good lead-in for Larry. I've been one of the things. Larry and I are well known for doing a lot of amp modeling. And amp modeling, for those of you that are not familiar, most of you guys are some kind of musician, I think. But if you're not, amp modeling is basically when you take a piece of digital gear and simulate with digital processing an actual like amp, an analog amp that exists. So you're basically running through all kinds of EQ filters and things to replicate, so you could just bring a setting up and say, this is what a Marshall 412 cab sounds like, or this is what a whatever sounds like. But before that, one of the interesting things about recording was, when you're recording versus playing live, and this kind of applies to the Steve Vai thing today too, because he went on and was using absolutely no distortion today, but you can make anything sound good in the studio. And one of the little tidbits I was going to share out there for just the total geeks, because I see James Tejada, I see you, and I know you're paying attention. So James Tejada, you can pay particular attention to this, is maybe 12, 13 years ago, they had this thing called the Ernie Ball amp bag, which was, it was like a soft gig bag for your guitar. And on the front, it had two little, like 2 or 3 inch speakers on it that were basically what a Bluetooth speaker setup of the time was, so that, like something that you would have plugged your MP3 player into back before even iPhone. So it was basically this thing mounted on the front of a soft gig bag so that you could sit in a room and practice. You could plug in and practice with this thing. And
it was
so
a Marshall though, right?
It was made by Marshall, but I mean, that
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean it was a Marshall,
Well, I'm just saying,
But
it
yes.
was a Marshall.
So here's the thing. This was basically a tiny little, like a transistor radio size practice amp. And the guitars that you hear on the song What's What off of the Sound Mind album, so they're big, heavy guitars. The idea of that song was to kind of blend Rush with The Who, and have like this big wall of guitars, like Pete Townsend, big chan 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 chan, with kind of a Rush influenced time signature. But the big heavy guitars on that, and you can go check it out after the show. So the song What's What off Sound Mind, that song was recorded miking the amp bag before there were, modelers and all that kind of stuff, or at least ones that were worth a crap. Now, the reason I did that is because Steve Morris is always changing stuff up in the studio and saying, you can use anything to record because it doesn't have to be loud, and so you come up with all these different ideas of just how to get different sounds and stuff. And so you can do crazy little things like mic a pig nose amp, or mic, so this thing was like a practice amp thing. Maybe next week I'll bring the demo video on, or maybe I can find it before the end of this show. But I did a demo video for it.
Do you still have the gig bag?
It's not in here. It's in storage, so I wouldn't be able to grab it and hold it up.
Well, I mean, just curiously, do you still?
Oh
have
yeah,
it?
I have one that's like really trash that was on the road with us forever, and then I have one that's not even a scratch on it, still brand new, ready to go.
I remember you jamming with Brian Beller with that bag.
Brian Beller.
Yeah.
We crashed one of his clinics, and he was just feeling like jamming. You're like, well, yeah, I got my bag. You leaned it up, started jamming.
So let's bring our friend on. I mentioned he's done more touring in the Deathstar with us than any other artist on the planet. I'll bring him on and I'll talk about how we met and everything. But this is truly one of my best friends. When I've been dealing with this pandemic crap and all the technical problems and everything, we are always the ones that are right there, and testing stuff with each other and checking in. So this is our friend. I'm going to make it sound official. Our friend, Grammy award-winning producer, performer, and guitar player, Larry Mitchell.
Hey, Travis.
Oh,
How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
nice.
What's going on here?
So further supporting the fact that we're all sci-fi geeks.
I don't know what is this sci-fi thing you're talking about? Oh,
Now,
Are you saying you're not a sci-fi geek?
Iron Lady lost her arm. Sorry.
Oh,
I don't know what just
Oopsie.
happened.
She must be cutting trees.
Ouch. What are you guys doing cutting trees?
Right?
Oh, bobblehead, Larry.
Yeah. Hey, that's too close to home today. We're
Exactly.
none of that Walking Dead stuff. That's going on
Yeah, right.
outside.
Yeah, exactly. Who knew, right?
Wow. How you guys doing?
Oh man.
How are you?
Nice hair, Dale.
Thank you very much. I'm working on my Thomas Dolby look.
Very nice. Very nice.
It's going to turn into Shirley Temple pretty soon. That's about the time I'll be able to get a haircut.
So I was mentioning, so we went on 2 minutes late tonight, and just like a gig, Larry was still sound checking.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Right? I like this though, Larry. You got kind of like a super pro, like Howard Stern radio studio vibe going here. I'm digging it. Makes me feel like we're all trained professionals now.
And I have a scared puppy right here,
Oh,
is that Gene?
Isn't your puppy's name Gene? And because we got like a little tropical storm going on coming up the coast here.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so if we lose power, then I'm gone. But Travis, you were talking about modeling, and I actually happen to have most of my rigs here, right here. So I started out using the AX8, and it died age 9.
Yeah, little teeny one.
You water it and it grows. It makes it come to the gig. And then I switched to the Aspect 3.
Nice.
My Aspect 2 is out on loan, and now I'm using the FM3.
Oh,
you water these, you put it in the microwave, killer sound.
Wow, that's
big.
That's
really
awesome.
You have to lug a microwave to every show?
There's always a microwave. You can find a microwave.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So just so people kind of know the story that don't, in 2000, I think it was 2007, Larry was still, should I just say endorser for another company? Is that the politically correct way to say it?
Sure.
He was endorsing another company, and he came to San Luis Obispo, California as a kind of a like whenever you do a guitar competition, there's always like the celebrity guest guy that comes into town, and so Larry was that guy that year. I was like the local kind of guitar player judge guy, and Larry was like the international guitar player judge guy. And then they had and then they had some local other people that were judging from radio stations and stuff. But Larry and I got stuck sitting next to each other at this guitar competition. Now, if you've ever been to a guitar competition, it's a great energy, and God bless them for doing it. And it's great that the kids get a chance to get up in front of people and everything. But it's 5 hours of kids getting up in front of people playing guitar solos. Right?
Whittly.
And some of them are, pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of them not so good, So Larry and I were sitting next to each other during this whole thing, and he knew what they do at these things is when it's time to tally all the votes and judge the whole thing, they get celebrity guy to get up and entertain everybody for like 20 minutes. And so that's kind of what was Larry's job. And I knew he was going to get up and do this. And he goes, hey man, do you want to get up and play with me? And I didn't have any gear or a guitar, but immediately just hanging out with you, for the very first time, just like such a warm and easygoing dude that I very, very quickly realized I have so much in common with, to a ridiculous level. From, even hearing you play, I was kind of like, this guy sort of sounds a little bit like me, or I sound a little bit like him, like, what is he?
The Rush influence.
The Rush influence and your tone and the Eric Johnson influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff. You are a guy that obviously cared about phrasing and cared about tone and was writing, beautiful tunes. But then there was stuff in there that I didn't have that made it even more interesting. And so eventually, we started doing tours together, and I just happened to have some shots from our very first tour ever.
Oh, you're gonna bring up shots that are like 13 years old?
Yeah, I got some shots.
Wow.
Can you see that? So that's I think that might be the first time we were on stage together, or one of the first couple nights ever. And then there's a few different cities in here. This here is, I think this is maybe San Diego Street Fair. And the thing I noticed about all these pictures of us, Larry, is that every time you look like you're having such a great time, and I look like I'm trying so hard not to blow it.
You're on stage having a good time. I'm right next to you. You're having a good time, right?
I am having a good time, but I look like I'm trying not to blow it. Like there's too much focus. I kind of am having a good time there. That's when we were playing at a music store that is now defunct, that was owned by Don Hertline. It was Hertline Guitars in the East Bay, San Francisco.
Nice.
And yeah, he's the man. When you ask who's the man, he's the man. Don Hertline. and then this thing happened.
Yeah, is Don on tonight?
I haven't seen
him yet.
We've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, so this right here is the very first time this ever happened, ever. Not in the world, but when we did it. And when this jam happened, I think this was my favorite jam I had ever been in of all time. And so here's the story. I'll get back to this picture in a second, but basically what had happened was we played, I think like six nights or something, where it was you guys opening for Travis Larson Band, and then we were on the Adams Avenue Street Fair schedule, and so you guys were after us. Now there's a thing where we started jamming on Little Wing at the end of the shows every night, and the night that you guys were closing, it was like, okay, well, we can't do that on my set because it would be anticlimactic for you to go on and do your set and then not jam. So then you had your band up there. And when Travis Larson Band does Little Wing, we ripped the chord progression repeating at the end 4 times of the song like Sting did it. So Sting did a version where they play, he plays the E to the whatever it is, Jen. I don't remember. Anyway, but basically he just repeats the bow, bow, now, and they do that 4 times, and that's the end of the song. So Travis Larson Band has ripped that, so we have a solid ending for the song. Nobody knows that. Nobody ever does that except us generally. So when we were playing with Larry's band, after 6 gigs of he and I doing those harmonies, his band didn't go to the repeat part. And so every single time they started doing the next chord of Little Wing, we're looking at each other like, okay, what kind of harmony are we going to do now? And every time it got weirder and weirder, but it worked. And he's looking at me, his eyes are getting wider and wider, and he's looking at me, and it's just like, oh. And every time we played it, it was brilliant. And then it got to the next one, it was like, oh shit, it was even more brilliant that time. And I remember that being like, that was my favorite moment on stage jamming with somebody outside of my band ever in my life, was that moment right there at Adams Avenue Street Fair, the first time we jammed. And so, ever since then, we've done it every time. And then we went through a thing where Larry and I didn't see each other for a while. Like we would only see each other on stage, like at events, so like we wouldn't have a chance to hang out for like a year. And then he would just walk into like a trade show concert, and all of a sudden we're on stage together, and I haven't seen him in a year, and it's just all we're just playing, but we didn't even get a chance to say, hey, how you doing, man? I love you. It was just, all right, here we are again on stage. So that's the
those are minor 17th harmonies.
Right? What's that?
Minor 17th harmonies.
right. So since then, go ahead, Jen.
I have a question from James Tejada, and I think he's referring to, do you remember the drummer you had? It was during one of the little runs we did together, and he did this crazy drum solo and then like jumped over his drums. This was at the Bistro in Hayward. He wants to know who was that drummer.
Derek Martin.
That's
Derek
right.
Martin.
I could not remember. Okay.
He was up until recently Little Richard's drummer for, I don't know, 20 years.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just read an article that he wrote about that. It was really great. Did you read that?
No, I didn't see it.
Yeah, he wrote an article and he posted the story of how he got that gig, and it was a great story. And of course, any story of he gets flown to LA and then he gets picked up by a limo with Little Richard in the limo. You know what I mean? That's just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Was that his audition? Like he got in the limo with Little Richard and
so kind of the short story version of the story is that he got in and he hung out with him for 3 days, and at the very end they actually did a little bit of jamming, but it was really, he realized by the end he was just sizing him up for 3 days.
Yeah. When you get into tours, especially like that Richard's tour, when you're in a bus for a long time, it's more important about who you are as a person than playing. Because when you get to that level, everybody can play, but it's who you want to spend the other 22 hours of the day with.
Right.
Because the playing's only 2 hours tops.
Right. And that's a perfect example of why we've continued.
Yeah. I have a cool story about the first time I played with Derek. We were going to Finland and with this artist Ellis Hooks to play, and we did this festival, big festival, opening up for Government Mule, but we had no rehearsal until we got there, and we flew over together. We got there, we tried to do a rehearsal. They tried to bring the gear in, like good gear to rehearse, but it was just like the worst stuff you could find, and then we started getting worried about the gear for the show. After them hearing a couple of minutes of us doing a rehearsal, they talked Ellis's manager into us playing an opening party for the festival. And we're like, all right, so some deal was worked out, and it was jam-packed. And we go to get on stage, and Ellis's manager looked at us and he goes, okay, so you guys are going to do this. Don't play more than this amount of time. If they want more than that, we're going to charge them more money, all kind of manager kind of snaky stuff. And he goes, and by the way, don't give Derek a drum solo. And we looked at him like, what? Yeah, don't. Whatever you do, don't give Derek a drum solo. And none of us had ever met Derek before, I'm pretty sure. And we get on stage, which was really the first rehearsal, and it was grooving. The place was going wild. And so we'd all taken solos. Muzz Skillings was the bass player, the original bass player from Little Miller. And it was a very rock and roll. Oh, I lost my ears. I guess you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
No, I can't. I can.
Yeah, we're here.
It was a very rock and roll blues band. It was not a blues band. But we're doing these blues songs. And so Ellis looks at me and he looks at Muzz and he goes, let's give the drummer some. And Derek did that. And he took it from 105 in that place where it was to like 200 easily. He did once he jumped on the throne and then flipped over. I guess younger. I think I swear that he did a backflip over it or a front flip, like completely flipped over the drum kit. And the place went on crazy. We must have played for another 3 hours. It was absolutely crazy. From that point on, we were like, oh, we got to give Derek a drum solo. And there were times where we played in front of thousands of people, and we gave him a drum solo, and he's playing out in the audience, like security around him. It was great. It was absolutely great. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was how we met more.
Well, and so a lot of people commenting that it was the Bistro in Hayward that happened on our tour last year, and or the year last year, yeah, I think last year. I
remember when he got up on the drum, like, oh, this is gonna happen, and I'm looking at the stage, the Bistro, and I was like, this is not gonna be okay, and he nailed it. It was so awesome.
At the Bistro, the front of the kick drum is about 8 inches from the front of the stage. Jennifer and Travis set their pedal boards on stuff off the stage. And when they're trying to walk in front of the drums, I'm always amazed you don't break your ankles doing that. So he's spotting this landing, jumping over my drum set, not his, by the way, the extra long kick drum. Mm-hmm. And you just, he had like dress shoes on, and you just hear him smack the floor exactly where it was nuts.
And there was all those monitors in front and cabling and power. I don't even know where he was spotting his landing. And then tables full of people right in front of that. I was like, oh my gosh. And
it was tight.
Yeah.
I remember talking to him beforehand, by the way, and just said, hey, anything you want to do, the seat's easy to adjust. And he goes, and he was completely non-picky about the drum set, period. Nothing. And no, I'll play it how you have it. No problem. And he goes, I brought my own stool. And I'm like, well, I mean, if you're not going to be picky, just use mine. But mine's a rotating, like gas bouncing. And he's like, no, I'm like, I kept trying to convince him, just use mine. It's fine. Now I get it. It's his launching pad.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be sure about that. That's the only thing you needed to be sure about, right?
Scott Baker says, Jen, what's on your arms?
Jen, it looks like you have socks.
We went over
on your
this
arms.
already. There's
arm socks.
Arm socks.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes, they're like leg warmers, but they're arm warmers. But I think it's more fun to say arm socks.
You guys just see what I have on my feet.
Sometimes you
just
can't
it.
wear long.
Yeah, we should see it.
Bring it.
I'm barefoot.
Nice.
I'm barefooted.
Are those Chewbacca feet? Or
No, they're just barefooted.
It's just
Oh.
It's just my feet.
You're
just barefooted. Bare feet.
Well, I was trying to reference the sci-fi thing again.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Larry,
no,
Larry,
Tauntaun.
Larry has giant hairy feet.
Giant hairy feet. My new band. I'm going to start a band called Giant Hairy Feet.
Right? It's like the polar opposite of little feet. So tell us a little bit, like for folks that are not hip to you on here, Larry. You've told me this story. I don't know if you feel like telling it again, but I find it fascinating because much like me in a lot of ways, on the other side of the country, you're kind of an enigma in your musical world. But the whole reason you started playing guitar, like what was the inspiration behind that? And maybe you know where I'm going with this.
Are you talking about my mom throwing my drum set out the window?
No, but that's a good story too.
Yeah, let's start there.
I wanted to play drums, and I had a little toy drum set, and my mom was like, I was playing it, and she wanted to watch TV, and she's like, don't hit the drums now. I'm trying to watch TV. And I'm like, okay. So when you're under 9, you can only wait so much, and then I started hitting again. She came in and warned me again, and the third warning was like, if you hit the drums again, they're going out the window. She didn't make idle threats, so they went out the third floor window in the back.
Wow. Jen started playing drums as well.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yep.
Yes, I saw your drum set.
I started on drums. Yeah.
She threw them out the window.
Yeah,
there's Jen's drum set back there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Is my drum.
I was prepared for all kinds of, cool technology.
Cool technology.
So no, I was thinking more of there's a TV show that a kid living in Brooklyn.
You mean Hee Haw?
Would probably not watch. Yeah.
See, that's not how I got started though. I was playing already, but
Were you playing already?
Oh yeah, I was playing already, but just running through. That's why it caught my attention. I was running through my grandmother's house apartment, and the Hee Haw was on, and I was like, "Whoa!" I stopped dead in my tracks. With Roy Clark, Jerry Reed, and Chet Atkins. It was just like I couldn't understand what was going on. It was just like, how? What? That definitely stopped me. And then I went to school the next day and was like, "Hey, did you guys watch Hee Haw last night?" They were looking at me like, "What are you talking about?"
Well, and so the reason I brought that story up is because I was doing a gig with Larry in Alabama a few years ago, and this was one of the tours where I was doing a clinic tour. This might have been like 6 years ago now, honestly. This was before the first Aristocrats national tour, because it's the last time I did an EV clinic tour, and that was that time I came to stay with you for a while. So, I had a clinic tour, and I said, Larry, book some gigs, and I'll come to town. And so we did. I think we did a few nights in a couple different towns, and we got up at that town. It was like a college town somewhere near you guys.
Auburn.
Was it Auburn? Maybe.
Okay.
It was that place upstairs. Anyway, it was a pretty nice stage. They had a glass.
The loft.
The loft. Yeah.
Columbus,
yeah.
Georgia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're playing in Georgia, and at soundcheck, Larry looks over to me and he told me this story. He goes, I was watching Hee Haw as a kid. He told me the whole story he just told everybody, and then he goes, you know how they used to have that thing where they'd play some lightning fast licks, and then you'd like say some kind of one-liner joke.
Yep, picking and grinning.
He's like, we should do that tonight.
I still think we should do it.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, we should do that. And I only had one joke. So in the middle of the show, he plays like some crazy, like little fast, kind of country / Larry shred lick. And he looks at me and right away, and I go, Skeleton walks into a bar, asks for a beer and a mop, boom, and that was the only one I had. But then he was like looking to do that like the whole set. Like we would play a song and then do that, but it wasn't going to happen.
I have a joke.
Where'd you get that joke, Travis?
I got that from Steve Lukather.
That's what I think.
I have a joke.
Yeah, sorry, Jen. Sorry. Where's your joke?
You guys walk into a bar. You'd think one of them would have seen it. Wow.
That's good. I like it. Actually took me a second.
Picking and grinning is what everybody's saying. Picking and grinning is what that was called. Okay, so Larry, we do a thing here on these webcasts where we do we throw this out to the audience too, and sometimes we'll take theirs, but we do a thing called Who's the Man? And so a Who's the Man would be like a Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth, that kind of thing, right? Like Who's the Man? So I had a Who's the Man for you tonight, but we had to tell the story first. And my Who's the Man for you and everybody else was Roy Clark, Chet Atkins.
Ooh, Chet Atkins.
Huh?
Chet
what
Atkins.
about Chet Atkins' Jerry Reed?
Ooh. I have to think that that's a tough one. Jerry Reed used to play nylon string on most of those things when he would do it. And that might be my first nylon string experience. But I'm still going to go with Chet. I'm going to go with Chet. Got to roll with Chet.
That's like a triple Who's the Man? Roy Clark,
right.
Jerry Reed,
Yeah. Pretty good one, though.
Jen?
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge Jerry Reed fan. Just like, I don't know. I'm just I am in general. So, but yeah, that's a really tough one. That's very tough. I don't know.
I think I've just seen more. I think I've just seen more of Chet Atkins, but Jerry Reed used to. Yeah. And also, I don't know if you guys remember. Well, Jen, you might remember. Remember Jerry Reed had that nylon string guitar that it looks like someone just took a saw and cut the bottom part off, and then they taped it, and because he didn't have a cutaway. I mean, cutaways didn't. Nylon string didn't exist back then, so I think he made his own cutaway.
Right.
Wow.
But I just didn't see that much of him.
Thing. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. What's yours, Travis?
Well, I'm going to say, the majority of people actually are saying Roy Clark.
Really?
Yeah, just looking at the chats. Can you see those chats, Larry? Up on the right-hand corner, you can actually see people commenting. And
I don't see that. Yeah, I do. I got my rigs are in the way here.
Larry has just too much gear.
I know, it's a lot of gear. Remember we did that tour with Rick, and we had modelers, and Rick was carrying like 900 pounds of orange stacks.
This is Dale's favorite story.
It's one of my favorite moments of my life. I don't know why that is, because guitar players are just famous for their their rigs and their tone and the tubes, and you can't, you got to feel the air and everything, and Rick's a great player,
right?
But the two people I know with the best tone are you and Trav, are like least fussy people. Well, you're not. It's not that you're not fussy, but you have command of your tone with something you pull out of your front pocket. and so I remember he was all excited about his new rig, and then Travis has like a Digitech processor.
I had a Digitech GNX4 back in those days.
And he was talking about what mics to use, and I was thinking Trav's not going to care, and then your quote was just, Who mics cabinets?
Right.
And I remember we did that one gig in Tacoma upstairs. It was really, and it was his cabinets had to weigh like 110 pounds a piece.
Yeah.
and so he bumped into a microphone or something like that. And you know, with an amp, with a guitar amp, and the microphone moves 2 inches to another direction, it's, you know, it could be horrible. And it was like, hey Rick, you got to move that microphone. You got to move that microphone.
I remember feeling sorry for Rick because, like, you would think he would be like, well, these guys are going to understand my fetish for gear and heavy cabs. These guys will understand me. And then just, you and Travis.
Sound check. The sound guy is working on everything, and Larry looks to the side. And he's just like, who makes cabinets?
That was the funniest. I still say that. Who makes cabinets?
Yeah, you do. That is kind of one of those quotes that is.
That's why TLB takes big cabinets out, but we started doing that as soon as they started making neodymium.
Yeah, you turned me onto those DV Mark cabinets too.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have 2 of those 212s?
I have 2 up in Seattle and I have 2 here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're like
you got 4 of them.
Hey.
Did I say 4? I think
more.
I borrow one from a homeless man down the street when I have a gig.
I'm gonna need another couple of those cabinets. So Larry and I, it's because we've done all this touring together and stuff. I've gotten the privilege of hanging out in that exact studio, and actually, he's slept in this studio many, many times.
I've slept in Larry's studio.
Yep.
Yeah. But we got to know and love Larry's mom a lot too. And by the way, is mom watching right now?
I think so.
How are you, Gene?
Hi.
I'm sorry to say the plant you gave me on last tour didn't make it. It just didn't make it through the heat of Mexico.
It made it so much of that tour.
It made so much. I had it. She gave me a cutting of this really, I forget what it's called, this really cool plant. And I had to strap it to the door of the tour van. And then in the door, there's this little, you know, like where you can put water, you know, a little thing in the door. So I had it in a water bottle and I'd fill it with water and strapped it to the handle. And I was always careful that whole tour, making sure I was careful to open and close the door. And then in Mexico, it got left in the van in the extreme heat and just didn't make it.
It was 111.
Anyways.
Yeah,
it was.
You know, Jen, you just said that. Just going to send you another one now.
Oh.
It was 100. Yeah, when it died, it was 111 outside the black van.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I had it strapped in. I couldn't remove. I mean, it was a little.
There was no way it was going to survive sitting out there, like if we went in to eat or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was a nice gesture. And but anyway, point is, we love Larry's mom, and she's always really sweet to us. She takes care of us. I'll tell a funny story about this that I know, Larry.
Does it involve bacon?
No.
Or
I'm not gonna get into your dietary choices. You know where I stand on your dietary issues.
Larry hates choices.
I know. Now, first of all, have you seen the show Hot Ones, Larry? Do you know about this internet show? No, there's a talk show similar to this where they have celebrities on and stuff, and they have to, every time they ask a question, they have a different of 10 hot sauces, and they get progressively hotter.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this show would kill you.
No, I can't even smell it. Smell the screen.
Right. We probably shouldn't even talk about it around Larry.
Right. Now, what I was going to say about Larry's mom is when we very first met her, somebody mentioned earlier how beautiful Jen is, by the way, on the stream. But Jen looks really young. Oddly enough, her last name is Young. I remember Larry's mom Larry's mom kind of like keeping an eye on her, just like she was nice, but she wasn't like, overtly outgoing. And then somehow it came up. We were talking about, our history and stuff, and Jen's age came up. And then Larry's mom immediately goes, "Oh, you're that old? Oh, well, we could have a conversation." And then she sat down.
All of a sudden, I was okay.
All of a sudden, she's like, "Well, you live some life. Now we could talk about some stuff."
Yeah.
That was like one of my favorite moments, just being at Larry's house. And then when she started playing it, you weren't even there.
Right.
Like you were out of town. We were just coming through town, and your mom came out to our show without you. So that's how supportive she is.
True.
Yeah.
So what's going on with are you doing like some tentative live stuff coming up maybe, or is that
funny you mention that? Yeah, there's a couple things that still haven't been canceled. One is the Dallas Guitar Festival, which I'm looking forward to. I did it last year. Andy Timmons was there, Eric Johnson was there. In fact, when I remember the first time when I first walked into the venue, within 5 minutes I'm standing there taking a picture with Eric Johnson and Andy Timmons and Ariel, and
Wow.
it was pretty trippy because those are my like two favorite guitar players, absolutely all-time favorite guitar players right there. But so I did it last year for the first time, and I've been wanting to do the Dallas Guitar Festival for a while, and had a great time, and was offered a better spot, an even better spot this year, and then it got moved due to the apocalypse coming. And so it's still on the books. We'll see what happens. It's now July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. And then I have some shows. They have 2 shows in Wyoming where they have very little cases of COVID. We shall see if those are going to happen. We'll find out if they'll happen on Monday. But today, right before I called into you guys, I've been on the phone throughout the day talking with the Atlantic Center for the Arts, and I'm actually going to go down there and do a show on healing. The sound of healing, I think we're going to call it. I'm not sure if we have a full title, but I'm taking a few artists that I've produced, and we're going to do a show on just kind of healing. Everything's spatial. They have 69 acres there. Everything's going to be spaced out, social distancing wise, and we're just going to get together and talk and play. We'll stream it, and there'll be a very small group of people live. And I'm looking forward to doing that. But other than that, everything else has been virtual. Everything else I've been doing has been online streaming.
Yeah, you reminded me last week you did the Kennedy Center live stream.
Yeah, that was fun.
And it was funny because, first of all, you texted me right before it, and I was cutting trees down with a chainsaw, so I didn't see it live. But I just wanted to say, and I have talked to you privately since then, but I just have to say that you went on there, and that was kind of an early part of the week, and it was like ridiculous stuff going on, and you, I mean, you're always such a positive force, and you balanced those things so well. But you went on there, and the way you worded it was like almost, it was like it helped me figure it out a lot. As far as you got on there and you basically said, let's just all take a breath, and there's definitely some things we need to talk about, but let's take a breath right now and enjoy each other, and then we can have that discussion as things progress. And I that was a beautiful way to put it, because you never know what to do and all that. And so I really appreciated that. And you're always that guy, which is what I love about you, no matter where we are.
I try, not always, but I try.
Well, yeah. I'll say that you're that guy when it counts. I mean, we've had discussions about, real life, and, when you got people in a closed van and we're all friends and it's private, you say whatever shit you want to say, right? I mean, but as far as you being a positive force and trying to, that's the one thing that's absolutely we've always been about. And that's one of the reasons the whole thing with this band and you being out there together so much always works. It's because it's all the same page, so
yeah. There's already enough negativity out there. And
right.
So just adding to that isn't exciting.
Isn't right.
helpful. So, I think sometimes it's a weird thing. I think there was a time where people didn't have all this access to the news, like the minute it happens or while it's happening. And it was good for artists to reach out, and not saying it's still not, but it was good for all artists to reach out and share their thoughts on things and try and bring people together. and to talk about what's going on. And now sometimes you almost need a break from the nonstop of what's going on. It's still important to talk about it, but someone has to say, "Hey, let's just play some music. Let's listen to some music." And I think music heals. I think music brings people together that sometimes would never ever get together without it. And that is a quicker way of connection with somebody. You have two people that totally disagree on everything, but they find a common bond in music first, and then they're more receptive to listening to the other person's side. Whereas I think that we've gotten to a society where people don't want to hear your side. If the minute they find out you're not exactly in line with them, they don't want to hear anything else you have to say. And that comes from everywhere. So it's good to stop, play some music, and go, I like Rush. You like Rush? Oh, cool. All right, let's. What else you like?
Right. What's so funny about that? But I mean, I'm going to move on slightly. But you mentioned Rush, and people don't know that you were in a Rush tribute band back in the '80s that completely kicked ass. I mean, kicked ass. And it's so funny because you're from you're from such a different world than that the as a Rush fan, but seeing showmanship that came out of Brooklyn back in those days, it's a trip to see that stuff. I don't know if you don't put that stuff out there probably, but I've seen it, and it's awesome. It's awesome in so many crazy ways, right?
I didn't put it out there, but it's out there. The keyboard playing drummer put it out there. I'm sorry, Travis. I have a dog that's shaking like can be. Shaking is
oh, that's okay.
So she's like in between me and the wires, and she keeps knocking them stuff. So
it's all right. That's the sidekick.
What'd you say, Jen?
Do you need to go take care of her?
No, there's nothing I can do. She's not going anywhere. She's like in between me and the table.
Oh, you were just apologizing for the shaky feed for a sec.
Yeah, and she may unplug some cables, or I don't know what's going on. I can't hear if there's thunder going on outside, or
must be thunder and stuff.
Yeah. But Rush, Zebra Triumph, The Police. It was fun. But I was in a band that did. I want to say we had like 40 Rush tunes. Maybe Leo's watching; he can correct me. But that's the quickest way to not have many women come to your show back then.
True story.
Of course, you mentioned the Police. You mentioned the Police, and you're the only one here that's actually met Sting, and that's the way to get women to come to your show, right?
And played in the band with Stuart Copeland.
Right. Oh, you've been doing jams at Stuart's house, right?
I did. We had the workings of a band for a minute, and I mean a minute. But I got the jam with Stuart, which was one of my favorite drummers. So it was awesome.
Nice.
To jam with Stuart.
Yeah.
I think. Is there a YouTube of that he's posted with you in it?
No, I don't know why that hasn't been posted. It probably has something to do. Well, I'm not going to go into that. But I should ask him.
I saw something, but maybe it was something that you sent me.
No, maybe he did post it. I should ask him.
Yeah,
because I talked to him for a minute at the beginning of the virus, because LA and New York were having it worse than anybody else. So I just did a quick check up on him and stuff like that. He's doing fine.
Well, when Neil Peart passed away, I posted the jam with him and Stuart, and
he took that hard, really hard.
Yeah. But I went down that rabbit hole, and I thought maybe I had seen something with you in there, but for those of you that don't know, Stuart does these jams at his house, and then he's got every instrument in the world, and they're all mic'd, right?
Everything's set up. And actually, Dale, you were talking about my in-ears, my wireless.
Yeah.
Stuart turned me on to something that, I consider myself an engineer, and I've done a lot of cool stuff for years as an engineer. But one of the coolest engineering things I learned was Stuart was about to do some percussion overdubs on the jam that we did, and he was walking around looking in his studio for something frantically. Like, what are you looking for? He goes, my in-ears. We're like, why is he using in-ear? And he grabbed it, and he needed his wireless pack, and it was genius because when you're in the studio, you're walking around, Travis. When if you have to mic something acoustic guitar, you're not necessarily close to your control center, your control thing. Or if you track in drums, like I used to track live, 2 bars at a time with live drums.
Right.
If you use wireless in-ears, you can go anywhere in the studio, not worry about tripping over cables and this.
That is a good point.
You're moving mics around to see how things sound. It's brilliant. And I learned that from Stuart. I'm like, oh, why did I think of that?
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
That's he's one of my favorite all-time top 3 drummers.
Yeah, mine
something
too.
like that. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I'm a huge fan of the old Police stuff. So that stuff was on your radar as well, obviously.
Yes.
Being in New York in the early days as a young person, when those guys started coming through and they were more of a punk band, was that something that was on your radar, or was that kind of off?
No, because I didn't start going into Manhattan until I want to say 85, maybe 85, maybe 86.
Okay.
So I was introduced to the Police by when they had the da da da
Zenyatta Madonna.
Zenyatta Madonna. And I remember that song struck out to me. A lot of friends thought it's still a silly song and stuff like that. But if you listen to the lyrics to that song, they're heavy.
Yes.
They're really heavy.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. It took me a while to figure out what was going on with that song that really caught me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I had seen them back in the CBG these days and stuff like that. But I wasn't in Manhattan at that time.
One of the great shows that's on these days for people looking for cool music stuff is on Access TV. There's a lot of great shows. It's kind of what MTV was back when MTV was MTV. But they have a show with Brian Johnson. Is it Brian Johnson? Not Brian Johnson. I'm sorry. The lead singer of AC/DC. I'm blanking out. Brian.
Yeah, it's Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson? Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so Brian Johnson has this show where he meets up with iconic guys like Sting, but he goes to basically back to ground zero with them. And so they went to the CBGB's where the building is, and they went to the coffee house where Sting had his very first cup of coffee in America the night they played CBGB's to nobody, the very first time they played here. And Sting hates that kind of stuff. He's not a guy that usually revisits anything, but it was really cool. And they were showing pictures that you haven't seen. And, it's like everybody starts somewhere. And it's always cool to see like those roots,
So, Sting's an interesting character.
I wonder if the coffee was the same.
Right.
That many years later.
I think when you come from Europe, you're like, what's up with this thing you call coffee?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So Larry, the interesting things that I noticed about our music that were different was, what was interesting and surprising about the fusion of music that you have is you sounded in a way, like I said, like me, in that we had similar influences, obviously, and tonality, and there's definitely kind of an Eric Johnson-y thing going on and all that stuff. And then there's a little bit of the thing that, looking at you might say, okay, I would expect that, where you've got like the funkiest groove imaginable and the deepest pocket, but it's mixed with this Eric Johnson-y kind of lead thing that gives you a really unique voice, which is always the cool thing about musicians when you have influences coming from opposite ends of the spectrum. So I guess the question is, what really came first for you? What, like, the first music that you really started to notice where it was important versus just in the background?
Well, I mean, I grew up on funk and R&B, but R&B back then was different than R&B today. But I grew up on like Parliament, Funkadelic, even the disco stuff. The one thing that propelled me into, because I didn't play any leads for like the first 5 years. I didn't know what that was, but I was just a rhythmic guitar player in the band. And then I got well, I'm not going to tell this story online, but I uniquely discovered Prince. and there was a song called Bambi on, and I borrowed a record, never brought it back, and because it had like distorted tones, and he's doing rock leads, and I was like, what is this? You know, there have been a few what is this moments. One was like that Chet Atkins of Jerry Reed, Roy Clark. Another one was Prince on Bambi. Another one was Eric Johnson, Cliffs of Dover. Those are probably three moments that just like you stop breathing for a second and go,
right.
What's
when you heard Eric Johnson, were you like everybody in our generation where you saw him on public television?
No.
Okay.
I think in 85, I want to say, he's on the cover of Guitar Player magazine, and the cover is actually called "Who is Eric Johnson and Why Is He on Our Cover?" And a lot of people hadn't heard of him, but they have testimonials in there from Jeff Beck and Stevie Ray Vaughan and a bunch of people. And it's funny. He's on it. He's got one of the like I have a bunch of them too. He's got one of those Western shirts on, I think. And in the article, he comes across a country player, I think. To me, I have to read it again, but that's the famous interview where he talks about Eveready batteries versus Duracell batteries in your pedals and getting different tone. So my friend Ira and I, we used to take those the inside the magazine was called a sound page. It was like a little floppy thing, one song. And we used to take those, and they dissolve after a while. So we record them, put them on your record player, and record them to cassette. So I had a cassette with all of the Blue Powder from Steve Vai and Steve Stevens, according to Guitar World, a bunch of people. And I hadn't done that yet. I read the article, and my friend Ira came to pick me up. Ira is artist relations for Samson, by the way. You might have met him. He picked me up, and we're in the car, and he goes, "So did you listen to that guy Eric Johnson yet?" I'm like, "The country guy?" He goes, "Country guy, country guy." No, the guy in the car. I said, "Oh yeah, he's a country guy, right?" He goes, "No, you should listen to him." So Ira's got his version of his cassette on with like Steve Vai and a bunch of people, and we're driving on a highway on Long Island, and all of a sudden, Cliffs of Dover comes on, and it's the one from that Austin City Limits. They took that version. And I'm like, "Stop the car, pull over. And he's, we're at highway speeds. I'm like, pull over, hitting them and stuff. He goes, "What's wrong? I said, "Who is this?" And he goes, "You almost killed us. What do you?" He goes, "You didn't listen to that guy, Eric Johnson." I go, "This is the country guy?" And because it was everything that I heard in my head that I wanted to, but I did not know how to articulate. And I was like, someone has found what's in my head, and they're doing it way better than I could ever dream of doing it. And that was the beginning of that.
Wow.
Well, what's interesting about that, and this, I'm just going to blow you up a little bit and say that your tone is right up there without the headache of 3 Ryder trucks and 2 guitar techs. And all that's
battery issues.
Yeah. And what people need to understand, I mean, obviously tone comes from your fingers, but it does come from your ear. And what people don't understand with gear is most of the gear now is good enough and capable enough to get what anybody would want. And when you hear somebody with really bad tone, I mean, not to throw anyone under the bus, but it all starts right here. Mm-hmm. It's what you hear in your head that you're trying to achieve. Whether you achieve it or not, then you start getting into limitations of the gear, but it's all right here. And so what you put out there is absolutely, I mean, I've heard that from day one. I've gone, I hear Eric Johnson in that lead tone. I hear this, I hear that, but it's a huge amalgamation of stuff. So it's interesting, and it's not by any means derivative. You're not going, this guy's an Eric Johnson ripoff. You're going, this guy's got like Eric Johnson tone and phrasing with like funk from, like, I don't know where. And like, so anyway, but it's interesting.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're able to get that with any gear.
Yeah, I mean it's all the same. I have a room full. I have some great tube amps here. I'm not taking them out on the road right now.
Sure.
I can get the. I'm basically recreating the sound with the fractal units. In the Eventide units. I'm recreating the sound that's in my head. I can do that with the tools that I have. They're all just tools. I could do that with an elaborate pedal board, which I have pedals and amps, or I could do it with one of the modelers, and I could do it with the UAD plugins and stuff like that. I'm choosing to take out on the road what's the best for me to travel with, most convenient, most consistent, and sound that I have available. The other thing I was going to say was this must have happened to you. There have been many times I've been on stage doing shows with several other bands, and you get the guitar snobs, amp snobs that come over there looking at you, and then they got like huge pedal boards and cool amps, big amps. There's thousands of dollars worth of gear, and I'm not against that at all. When there are some friends of mine that still use that stuff, and they're using it. It's great, but I've had guys like you can hear the snickers and ridicule until I play.
Right.
And then they come over and they're like, "What are you using?"
Right.
The same stuff I used. You were just laughing at. That's what I'm using,
Yeah.
and I know that has to happen to you because left be like, "What's going on? What's he got going over there?" Oh, and then they hear you play and they're like, "What's he got going on over there?"
Well, it's funny because starting with the earliest of modelers, when we did the first UFO tour. The UFO tour we played on, which was 2009, those were huge shows. That was the first time they'd kind of come back on a big level, and we were selling out like theaters and stuff. And I was in front of all these Marshall stacks that Vinny was using, and I had a GNX4, which everybody thought was total trash. I mean, it was a toy, right? And I can say that now because who knows where that company is.
Right.
But I have 6 of those things behind that screen behind me. Still to this day, because when I need to fly to Larry Mitchell's house and do gigs, that's what I'm going to use, because it's got tracks built in and everything. But I had that, and it was exactly what you're talking about from everybody, the whole front row of fans, people in the band, the crew. And Jen and I didn't take any gear. We got on that tour, and the very first day of the tour, we gave $900 to their engineer, and we said, "You're our engineer too." And he was super stoked, and he would drag monitors around where we needed them and everything. So every night it felt like we had rigs where we wanted them. They were, we had huge monitors, of course. So I didn't have any gear on that stage. Jennifer and I literally would walk on with GNX4s, set them down, XLRs in, do the set, unplug them, walk off with GNX4s.
Nice.
And we had
no great tone.
Yeah, and it sounded fantastic. In fact, it sounded sonically better than them. I'm not afraid to say that because we were running direct. Everything was stereo. It's super clean. The sound guy had 100% control. There's no hot spots of the stage where one guy's too loud and one guy's not, and all that stuff. All that stuff went away. And so when we go out with all the gear with our band, it's because we can, and it's our band, and it's fun. But
I've been on stage playing, and 2 other guitar players have had like the $3,000 guitar amps and a bunch of pedals, and it sounds like bumblebees fighting.
Oh, totally.
And it's like, and then I'm not talking about it. It was just those particular guys who were very snooty about the tube amp thing, but
It's funny, as a non-guitar player, my whole time in this band, I've watched people come up and say they want to talk about tone, or what are you using? How are you doing that? Before the GNX4, what was that, like an RP10 or something? He had this plastic pedal, and I'm using this, and they would just be all disappointed. And they'd almost like, first they wanted to talk gear, and second they're like, well, then I should be able to get that tone too, I guess.
I had an RP10, like a Digitech RP10. They were all the RP units, whatever that means, and it was RP1 up till 10. And maybe like 1998, we opened for Buddy Miles, which was one of our early bigger gigs. And the guy literally looks down and goes, you're not using that for sound, right? You're just using it for some kind of switching. You're not using that, right? Yeah. But back then it had an AX7 tube in it, right? Like or 12 AX7 tube or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been my sound. I've been using that crap since 1990.
Hey Travis, can we answer a question here? Or
yes.
Can I bring it? So it looks like Fritz TK.
You from the Netherlands, right?
Oh, from the Netherlands. Oh, cool. Gear with too many options can drive you really nuts. All I have to say is they're just there. You don't have to use them. In my fractal units, I use versions of of amps that I actually have here, and I only use. For years I only used 2 different amps live, amp models. Now I use 3, and some songs I only use 1. You can narrow down the options, otherwise it could drive you crazy. So just because they're there doesn't mean you have to use them. It's like saying you're getting ready to go to a gig and you look in your garage and go, oh, I have 200 amps. I don't know which amp to bring. Bring the amp you play the most, or that will help you get the job done. But don't get caught up in that. Just narrow it down.
Say, I have 200 cars. Which one should I take to the gig?
Well, no, I don't. I have 1 car.
I used to always read
a car.
I remember realizing something like that, Larry, but it's more primitive for drummers because your instrument generally does 1 or 2 things. But I'd always read these articles about guys who'd I have about 12 or 15 snares I'll bring to a session, and the couple this and couple that. And I would do the same thing, but I imagined them using a different snare and a different set of cymbals for every song, just make it perfect. And then one day I realized, oh, you bring 12, so you have the right 2 that you're going to use for the whole album. Same thing you're saying. It is cool to have the options, but doesn't mean you're always using them all.
Yeah, especially if you're when you're first starting out with any of the gear, make it narrow it down and start with like 1 or 2 amps that you know how to dial in the sound. Don't just go, hey, you know how many times I've talked to people who like, hey, none of the plexis in here don't sound like plexis, and I'm like, really? Okay, I have a plexi. It kind of sound. Which one have you tried? And they'll talk which Marshall plexi, and I go, well, which Marshall do you have in real life? And they go, I don't have one. All right, so which plexi are you most familiar with that you're trying to dial it in to sound like? I never played through a plexi before. Then why are you playing through a plexi? Pick an amp. Start with an amp, because that means you really don't know what a plexi sounds like. You can't say I listen to AC/DC and I know what a plexi sounds like. I'm telling you, as an engineer and a producer, the tone that makes it to a record and a final version record has been compressed and EQ'd and compressed and EQ'd in every stage, from tracking to mixing to mastering, to fit together in a song. It's not necessarily the sound of the same that you want to start with by yourself playing before you even start jamming with your band. So start with an amp that you know how to dial in to get it to sound good, and stick with that for a while. And then slowly, it's just picture yourself going to a music store that has a bunch of amps, and you just plug in the amps that you never have no idea how to dial in. If you're a Mesa Boogie fan, you don't plug into a Marshall and go, hey, where's the graphic EQ? Where's all this stuff? And I don't know how to dial this in. And if you're a Marshall guy, you plug into a Mesa Boogie amp, you're going to go, oh man, there's too many switches here, too many knobs. Mm-hmm. And why is the bass, if the bass is above 3, why does it sound so boomy and weird? Mesa's the bass, the low end on a Mesa is way different than the low end on a Marshall.
Yeah.
So narrow the options down for a while, and then I have this thing under control. I always wanted to try this amp. Let me try it. Let me read out how you're supposed to dial this in for different sounds.
Yeah.
Let me try it.
Right.
Yeah.
But
just got a question from Brian, which might be a good way to wrap up things or start to. He says, when was your last live gig and how many years ago does it seem like at this point? My last live gig was standing on stage with Larry at the NAMM show. And we played with Larry, Mike Keneally, Andy Timmons, Teddy Kumpel, Jen Majera from Evanescence, a whole bunch of people. But Larry and I jammed for the encore at the end of the show, and Mike Keneally and I jammed at the encore. That was the last time I walked off a stage, was that show, which was amazing and a hard show to walk away from and not play for who knows how many years. So when's the last time you played, Larry? Played in public? Was that the show?
I did a clinic in Phoenix right after NAMM, and that was that was discovering that I had the flu. But the last time with the band, was that show that we did, was that the Saturday night or the Friday night?
That was the Saturday night. You and I played every single night at the NAMM show, every night.
Because my set was at midnight on the Saturday night, wasn't it?
No, it was at Friday night.
Okay.
Yeah. So Thursday night, you and I did the thing, the Ronnie Lee Jam.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then Friday night, we did your thing at the Marriott.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saturday night was the thing with Andy and Mike and everybody. So we got to play every single night, and we were on the road for a week before that. So we spent like a couple of weeks together around the NAMM show. And that's the last time I was on the road, was with Larry, which is kind of a yearly thing. The year before, we did the same thing. We went out for a couple of weeks around NAMM, did the same exact stuff.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Your show at the Marriott is ridiculous.
That was and I have some really great guests. It's been Andy didn't come, but I think the first 4 years I did it, Andy sat in every year. Including the first year he was just walking through the lobby, and I was like, Andy, come on up and play.
Yeah, I was there.
You jammed that time as well.
I did two of those, and one I did them both with Andy. One of them, you literally walked off, handed him your guitar, and then you handed me your guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of them we came prepared. It was like probably the next year we came prepared, right? Andy showed up with a guitar, I showed up with a guitar, and we plugged in, and But the very first time we just went to watch, and then all of a sudden Larry's in the audience with a wireless, just hanging guitars on people.
It's a party,
what Larry does.
It's a party, and that Marriott, we've done it 7 years in a row, I think, and we've exceeded the lobby maximum amount of people several times, and it's just a lot of fun. It's hot, it's sweaty.
It's past close.
It's what?
It's past closing time.
Way past closing time.
Yeah, that's the running joke with Larry. Past closing time.
Yep, but they do it. I'm always looking at Tim Moyer and going, I got one more guess. He goes, all right, got it. And then 20 minutes later, he's like, all right, gotta go. And I'm like, all right, I only have one more guess. And he goes, who is it? Werner Reed. Come on. All right.
Another one of my favorite quotes of yours, Larry, was we were up in, is it Tacoma or Seattle? Is it Bone Daddies? Is that a place up there? Anyway, we're playing this venue, and you were going out. Oh, nice. Thank you, Jazz Boats. Thank you, Jazz. Oh. One of the best things about doing online lessons lately for myself is meeting all the pets of the students. Anyway, nice. So Larry will walk off stage with a wireless and just be killing it. Just the whole house is going nuts and people are going crazy, and he'll put his guitar out and have people fret some notes. And it's so funny to me. I remember you being so self-aware about this because you're killing. It's not like you're going to run back because you're like 3 minutes over the set, but you walked by me and you're like 40 feet from the stage now, and band's on stage slamming, and you're solo, and everybody's losing their minds. And you kind of saw me, and I was into it, and you're like, I know, get the hell off the stage. But it was so self-aware and funny because everybody's going nuts, and he sees me and goes, I know, I'll get
Right. Hey, I have to say, Brian Whitney from the JPF Awards is on right now. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Brian is a huge supporter of independent music and runs an awards show and does all kinds of causes and everything to support musicians. And Haven't seen him in a long time, so it's good to see you on here. And he says, hopefully when the coast is clear, we can finally finish up those awards. So we have 2 or 3 JPF awards from our first couple of records, and then we've unfortunately missed the last few. So hopefully we'll see what happens. There will be another JPF
All right,
award.
Larson.
All right.
Yes, we need to wrap this up for the East Coasters, and Larry's one of those. What time is it there, Larry?
Oh, it's only 10:36.
There's only 2 hours. And besides, Larry texts me at like 3 a.m.
You're up.
Well,
the only 2 people that I'll communicate with when I'm like literally just about to doze off and it's like almost dawn is Dale or Larry. Like I'll get a text and it'll be like responding to something and it'll be the middle of the night. And it's like, okay, what are you doing up, man?
What about me?
You never get in touch with those hours. Jen is going to check her messages on Facebook, though. I promise.
I did today. I totally did today.
Well, okay. Travis, I'm usually up at that point watching The Flash. I've been burning through seasons of The Flash right now.
Oh, is that right?
Nice.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh,
well, man, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. You are,
thanks, Larry.
Like I said, you were the given. Everybody was asking. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were watching, but I said when we said we were going to start doing these, the very first one, everybody immediately said Larry Mitchell. When I said we'll do guests, and so we had to hold off for a while just because it was like the most predictable thing to do, you know. But I hope this all resolves in some kind of timely manner. I assume. Honestly, realistically, I think we're all looking at next year where we're really going to be getting out and doing some real stuff. And now NAMM is looking like maybe January isn't even going to happen.
Did they say anything?
I've had a few phone calls about it. We'll see. But there's not many people going already. Like the companies are not committing to it.
Yeah.
So
it's for people that are watching now that don't know, NAMM is usually Winter NAMM is about 100,000 people a day on Friday and Saturday from all over the world, and you get into all the logistics of where, depending where the virus is, if they come in, they might have to quarantine for 14 days. Companies can't do that. Stores can't do that. Buyers can't do that. Just come to a country, quarantine yourself for 14 days in a hotel that you're paying for, then go do something, be around another 100,000 people. And then when you come back into your country, they're like, we're going to put you in this room for 14 days. If you're still alive, then you can come out.
Right.
And even before this, before the stakes were so high in previous years, everybody would joke about going to NAMM and getting sick because you're just collecting. You're just collecting everything from all over the world. So, it makes sense.
So, but we love you, man, your family, and I can't wait to hang out again.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
And do you have anything around you can make noise with?
Do I have what?
Do you have any guitars around that make noise right now?
I'm not plugged into anything. Why?
Oh, because we just we do an outro jam sometimes.
Knowing full well it'll be out of sync. Oh, nice.
Go ahead, Dale.
I want to play a Bo Diddley beat, seeing that Squier guitar.
Go ahead.
Remember the links, Travis. Make sure everybody goes to Larry's page.
Dale's not mic'd up anyway this week for whatever reason. So we can't hear your drums because you're not mic'd up this week. So, but I will make
your audio from me.
Yeah, we were getting computer audio. Anyway, Larry, all his links are in the description of this. We have PRs, we have merchandise, all that kind of stuff. Everybody right now, so please support if you can. And check out Larry's Tuesday Night Live, and I'll be doing a live stream. I'm going to make some noise.
Nice.
You guys are silly.
Stick around for a minute, Larry.
All right.